club in the world and also one of the largest. I'm Beth Knox, your club president. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. As we convene today, we respectfully acknowledge that we do so on unceded Coast Salish land, specifically the ancestral land of the Duwamish, Suquamish, Stillaguamish, and Muckleshoot tribes. This acknowledgement does not take place of the authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land we are on. We acknowledge and pay respect to the first peoples who gathered here, to elders past and present, and to all Indigenous people. Now, several Rotarians have asked over the last few months why I do a land acknowledgement every week. So I wanted to share just a bit of background. Land acknowledgement is a traditional custom that dates back centuries in many Native American nations and communities. For non-Indigenous communities, land acknowledgement is a powerful way of showing respect and honoring the Indigenous peoples of the land on which we work and live. Acknowledgement is a simple way of resisting the erasure of Indigenous histories and working towards honoring and inviting the truth. Here in Seattle, you'll hear acknowledgements before professional sports games, community and association gatherings, events held by our electeds, and anywhere people want to show respect to the heritage of our land. Now, here at Seattle 4 Rotary, we enjoy music, singing, and words of inspiration to kick off our meeting. Leading our music committee today is past President Jimmy Collins, who is accompanied by Jevin Powell. And following the music, I invite Bill Center to share our inspiration for the day.
Thanks very much, President Beth, and good afternoon, everyone. A fellow musician, Louis Armstrong, had an unmistakable voice and always an upbeat message. Today, we'll sing his trademark, "What a Wonderful World." As I think about the words and the idea and how they fit with our message from our guest speaker, I think of two words. One is stewardship, which all of us are responsible for, but also restoration, which is essential if we're going to keep the world wonderful. I'm delighted to be joined by Music Committee Co-Chair and guitarist extraordinaire, Dr. Jevin Powell. Maestro? I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yeah. Thank you. Only got one good one.
One team, one fight. Okay. Speaking of team, congratulations to team leader, spark plug, driving force extraordinaire, President Beth Knox for landing the next year's Winter Classic hockey game here, New Year's, right? As President Biden would say, this is kind of a big deal. I made no New Year's resolutions again this year. Please be seated. From my vantage point, I'm still a work in progress. When something needs changing or improvement, there's no reason to wait until January 1st to get started. But I did have 3 wishes for the year ahead. My first wish is that we, the people, will work together this year to accomplish something extraordinary, something so monumental and meaningful. They'll be celebrating, referencing, and benefiting from it for generations to come. I know we all have a list of 3 or 4 worthy projects that are both monumental and achievable if we commit to them and work together and don't care who gets the credit. My second wish is that the current wave of atmospheric rivers sweeping up on the US West Coast will not cause too much damage, but will instead herald the end of the historic drought which has been afflicting the American West for 22 years. That would be great. And finally, as I pondered my third wish, I realized that the really big first wish will only be achieved through billions of individual acts of kindness, sacrifice, and goodwill. Let's all pledge to do our part, plus however much more it takes. So I wish for that too. Please join me in a short prayer for the new year. Dear Lord, we thank you for the blessings you have showered upon us. We pray for wisdom, courage, and perseverance as we strive to make the year ahead so extraordinary, we won't be longing for a better year next year. Amen.
Amen to that, Bill. Thank you, Jimmy and Jevin and Bill, for setting the stage for our meeting today. Our greeters today was John Hojaboom. Thank you also to Kim Moore for serving as our Zoom monitor. We appreciate that. And to our meeting reporter today, Pete Delaney. We have several guests that I would like to recognize today. First off, I'd like to ask Rotarian Arun to stand and be recognized today. Arun joined Rotary. He joined Rotary in Manila, Philippines, and continued in India for the past 12 years. And he was president of his club in 2019-2020. Other guests that we have a prospective member, Jack Halley, a guest of Roger Chapin, Ellen Bloom, a guest of Jim Duncan on Zoom is Jim Barnhart, and he is also a prospective member. And our guest of our featured speaker, Jen Steger, today is her brother, Mark Young. Could you all stand so we can recognize you? Excellent. All right, I have just a few updates to share with you this morning or this afternoon regarding, first of all, is regarding the 2023-2024 board and leadership nominations and election process. So in 2 weeks, on January 18, nominations chair Jan Levy will share with us the slate of Rotarians who are stepping up as leaders starting next July. At that time, members will have the opportunity to vote for their candidates through February 1st. At which time we will announce your new president, vice presidents, and members of the board. Now, on a separate but related topic, we have a job description for club director at Seattle Rotary. Believe me, that is good news. I do want to thank all of the past presidents who have served on this committee, as well as others like Jevin Powell and Virginia McKenzie, Dominic Musafia. Everyone has spent a lot of time contributing input and context around this job description. I am very grateful for that. Now that we have completed that process, this afternoon, I will email out the job description to all members of the club, and it will be posted on LinkedIn. Now, Rotarians, as you all know, are extraordinary networkers, so I am confident that we will find excellent candidates through your contacts. In Virginia, who is an expert in recruitment, has informed me that truly the word of mouth with individuals like yourself is our most valuable way to find the best candidates. So I really encourage you to forward this out to your contacts, post it, repost it on LinkedIn, reshare it, and put it out to anyone you think could be a good candidate. Now, the candidates will send their resumes to, we have the email up here on the slide. It will be in the email as well, and it's on the job description, but jobs@seattlerotary.org. The closing date is January 23rd. And our search committee will then vet resumes and bring the most qualified candidates to our interview panel before selecting the finalists. As you can imagine, we are all very eager to have the new director hired. At this time, I'd like to introduce club member Eric Christensen, Rotary Classification Law. Eric is a principal at Beveridge and Diamond and serves as chair of the Seattle Rotary Environmental Sustainability Committee and is here to share an update on the work of the service committee. Eric.
Thank you, President Beth. So I would like you all to join in the mission of bringing hope, which is what the Environmental Sustainability Committee is all about. So you may wonder, environmental sustainability, what does that mean? I've included a few quotes here to give you the idea, but what it really is borrowing from the great law of the Iroquois Nation. We should, in making every decision, think about its impact on the next 7 generations. It's not a way that we think about things much in this society, but that's basically the point of environmental sustainability. Or to put it more simply, we want to pass on a wonderful world, as Jimmy says, to our children and our grandchildren that's just as wonderful or perhaps even more wonderful than the world we have now. So how do we provide that kind of hope through the Sustainability Committee? We do a bunch of different things, which I will talk about each one of these in turn. So small local bits of hope in the form of Seattle Rotary Foundation grants to small nonprofit organizations around the Puget Sound region. These are 3 examples. The first one is Viva Farms, which is we've supported for many years in various configurations, but it's excuse me, a farm that is a cooperative arrangement that teaches new farmers how to run organic farms. The produce, so we cover many Seattle bases. The produce that they produce is sold or provided to food banks, so helps with providing healthy food to people that otherwise wouldn't have it around our region. And it reaches out to communities of color and others that have oftentimes been brought here to work on our farms and now want to go into farming for themselves. And it also addresses other problems like pollinators and pesticide reduction and a number of other things like that. In the middle, the cute little people are from an organization called Tiny Trees, which we support, that provides nature-based environmental education in Seattle parks to preschoolers. And the slightly larger kids up there are from Nature Bridge, another organization that we supported for many years that provides science-based environmental education in our national parks. And specifically, we've supported the Nature Bridge campus on the Olympic Peninsula and Olympic National Park for many years. We also have service projects. This is a photo from a project that we did a few years ago, helping to clean up one of the trails here in Seattle. We're hoping now that COVID's, I hope, fingers crossed, is dying down to start these again this year. We also arrange outings. This one is a outing to the Middle Forks Snoqualmie River Valley in cooperation with the Mountains to Sound Greenway a few years ago. This one is from our most recent outing. This was in cooperation with Nature Bridge, the NOAA Exploration Day in November, where we got to go to the Olympic Peninsula and look firsthand at probably the mother of all ecosystem restoration projects, at least here in the Northwest, which is the removal of the Elwha River dams and the restoration of the salmon and steelhead runs in that river. The next one is coming up in April, so look for your chance to sign up and go out. I know all the Rotarians who participated the last time had a great time. We also, in a larger context, don't do just little bits of hope here in the Puget Sound region, but are part of a global movement of Rotarians to try to address environmental sustainability and climate action across the globe. We're also part, thanks to former President Kathy Gibson, District 5030 has its own sustainability committee, and we work closely with that committee for both support of projects like the ones that we just did, and also cooperating on outings and the other things that the committee does. So if you want to spread a little hope in the world to counter all the dire headlines you see about climate and other environmental problems, we'd be happy to have you join us. There's my contact information, and we look forward to seeing you at one of our next committee meetings.
All right, thank you, Eric. We appreciate that report and all the good work that the Sustainability Committee is doing. Now, today's main speaker, Jennifer Steger, is the Pacific Regional Manager for the NOAA Restoration Center, a division of the Office of Habitat Conservation, housed in the National Marine Fisheries Service. Jen grew up in New England and attended university where she double majored in biology and chemistry. She received a master's degree in environmental geography and ecology from the University of Connecticut, and spent several years as an environmental consultant before joining the NOAA Corps. Jen served as an officer for 7 years, driving ships, fishing and surveying in the Bering Sea, Gulf of Alaska, the Arctic and Antarctic, and along the Pacific coast. She took a position in the NOAA Restoration Center in their damage assessment, remediation, and restoration program, working with a team of lawyers and economists to settle more than 50 natural resource damage assessment cases. The settlements allowed her to implement more than 200 million in habitat restoration projects in the Northwest and another 100 million across the Pacific region. Her team also administers the community-based restoration program, which provides technical assistance and funding to more than 500 tribal, state, county, local, and nonprofit organizations to implement habitat projects for commercial and recreation fisheries. Jen lives in Issaquah, Washington, neighbor of mine, and prefers to spend time outdoors with her husband, Philip, her sons, Jonathan and Christopher, and her Labrador, Bumblebee. Please welcome Jen.
Hello, everyone. I have my notes and I will start, but I was stunned by first the tribal acknowledgement, the land acknowledgement that you did. That was beautiful. Every single meeting that I have with my folks and any of the groups that we work with, that's where we start, is with the tribal acknowledgement. And it's always really touching to have that. And then I feel like I was actually like destined to be here because What's a Wonderful World is like my favorite all-time song. So thank you, Jimmy, for that. He brought me to tears. I had to get tissues out to start with. And I'm like, how do I recover from that and talk to you people after this? So thank you very much for having me here. Again, my name is Jen Steger, and I am the Pacific Regional Manager for the Restoration Center in NOAA. You folks, are you familiar with what NOAA is? National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, mostly? Yeah, most of the time people spell it NOAH and ask me if I count animals 2 by 2. And I'm like, well, sort of, but not quite. The other part that Jimmy mentioned about stewardship, the actual mission of our office is observing, stewardship and restoration of habitat areas. So we do definitely share a common interest in stewardship of the environment. And that is in our mission. What I have come to talk to you about today is a lot of that, the restoration is funded through appropriations. As you guys know, a federal agency, that's where we get our money, is through restoration appropriations. And the bipartisan infrastructure bill that was passed not too long ago really brought a whole lot of funding to these areas of habitat restoration, conservation, and fish passage, which is unheard of. I mean, just as a reference, my office normally nationwide would only administer around $10 million to these habitat restoration projects. This year alone, there's more than 105 million that's going out the door. So that's a couple orders of magnitude bigger than what we're used to dealing with. And those projects themselves, and why people should care about them, not just because of the fish, we all care about the fish and the environment, but the triple bottom line approach that NOAA takes in these projects, which means that we definitely care about, you know, the place, the people, and profit for businesses, so that you can sustain a place and have that place grow and have the economy good and have people having jobs. So it's not only about the fish and the habitat, it's habitat in support of communities and fisheries. So that's kind of the focus of what we've been looking at. The bipartisan infrastructure law, it was signed November 15th, 2021. There's $1.2 trillion that's going into this bill. And of that money for NOAA, there's just around 3 billion for NOAA. And that's over the next 5 years to implement funds for habitat restoration, conservation, and coastal resilience. And then I have a little link up there onto the NOAA.gov infrastructure law, because that will give you the breakdowns of all of the other different provisions that NOAA is using or can administer through that law. For us in the Office of Habitat Conservation, there's approximately 891 million. Next slide. 891 million over the next 5 years, and it's divided into two big pots and then another couple of pots below that. But the two big pots are 400 million to enhance fish passage by removing barriers and providing technical assistance. Of that 400 million, we reserved up to 15 million that goes directly to Indian tribes to administer. And that includes some capacity building for those tribes, because a lot of times those tribes don't have that kind of money to be able to support the discussions that they need to have. The second pot is 491 million. It's a very flexible pot that includes technical assistance to restore marine and estuary and global and Great Lakes ecosystems, and also to prevent extreme weather, flood damage, erosion, those kind of things in the ecosystem as well. And then just going a little bit farther into the fish passage funding itself, again, that's 400 over 5 years. These funds help protect and restore the sustainable fisheries. It's targeted in my office about recovering endangered species. So Chinook salmon here for the main part. Chinook salmon also help recover southern resident killer whales if we can get more of those fish in the water for the killer whales to eat. And then that second piece is also restoring fish passage barrier movers for tribal priorities. And that's the 15% that I'll talk about just a little bit more here. Oh my gosh, I jumped ahead, didn't I? So the total amount that you're going to be seeing each year is around 65 million for fish passage. And that goes from everything from, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the culvert decision where the tribe sued the state around the size of the culverts to allow fish passage. It's to eliminate those kind of barriers. To also eliminate things like, oh, I don't know, the one that was also brought up, the Elwha. We did fund a good bit of the Elwha dam removal, and that is the biggest one. Washington State is actually going to be in a little bit of competition because the Klamath is coming online for restoration as well in Northern California. That one is the biggest one worldwide. So Elwha is going to fall to number 2, but that's still not a bad place to be. We wanted to do more of those kind of things. Eligible applicants for all of these projects are, again, tribes. It's also states, counties, local governments, nonprofit groups, for-profit companies can actually apply for the money too. They just can't gain an actual profit on the federal funds themselves, but they actually can apply for those bipartisan infrastructure funds. This one is one of my personal favorites because this is not one that NOAA has ever done before, especially not in fisheries. The tribal pot that we put forward is the one it's up to 12 million, and we actually reached a little bit farther than that. And it's funding that was designated specifically for Indian tribes. And again, since we haven't done this before, our administrator actually held with all of us in the regions listening sessions for the tribes, for them to give input on how they wanted to receive these funds. And that information that we got from the tribes did feed the language that you saw and that you will see, or that what you saw in the notice of funding opportunities that went out to the tribes. One of the main things that the tribes did want us to do that we could not accomplish was that they didn't want it to be competitive. And we have all of these opportunities that we put out are on a competitive basis. But we did reserve a certain amount for the tribes. And we based it on their priorities, and actually did fund a lot of projects that are only capacity driven. So it was paying for the tribes to have a voice at a table and being able to participate. You know, I am able to participate. I'm paid to be at the table. None of these people are, you know, and they have other things that they need to be taken care of. And that these funding opportunities, as you saw, were closed for this year already, and the selections have already been made. And these are the projects that were announced about not quite a month ago here. And Washington did quite well. There's more than 25 million that is coming to Washington State for this initial round of projects. And in those, you know, places like the city of Hoquiam, there's a couple that went to Trout Unlimited on the outer coast for their kind of cold water coast fish barrier removal project. The Wild Salmon Center, Tulalip tribes got a significant amount of funding, which I'm very proud of, because that's even under the fish passage part. That's not the tribal part. They actually competed in the regular fish passage one. And then a few others. And I'm actually looking forward to next year, because this one came out so fast. We had very little time to actually get out and talk to our partners. So having in the fish passage alone, we had more than 160 applicants that came in that we had to whittle down. For the tribal one, 120, and that was with very short notice. So we were pretty happy with where that came out. And again, this shows here the tribes that were actually funded in Washington State. We have a couple that are down on the Columbia, and then a couple in Seattle and Puget Sound, and then some additional ones down at the Eel River. This, not as big as the Elwha, but this is the Enlow Dam, which is on the Similkameen River that kind of borders Canada on the Washington border. This has been it was a former FERC project. It was an electrical dam that has been defunct for more than 100 years. So, well, 50 years it's been defunct. It's been there for more than 100. And this is one of the projects that's actually got funding both through the tribal and the fish passage, both sides. So we're really proud of that one. And this is also the picture that actually went out for our press release about the 105 million that was being, those projects that were being selected for the bipartisan infrastructure bill. You hear the congressional staff and all of the different press releases talk about unprecedented, once in a generation. It's not an exaggeration this time. We have never seen this kind of funding. It's going to be going for the next 5 years. And it really gives us an opportunity to make a difference at a scale that we have not had the opportunity to before. And we do that with partners. It's not NOAA, it's our partners that do that work. And then I had to put in another plug for the tribes. This is up in the Skagit watershed, where the use of the tribal ecological knowledge, the pride of place for those people that have been here in time immemorial, we learn countless things every time we do a restoration project by stopping and listening to what they have seen happen on the land for as long as they've been there. So the tribes are really key in that development. The second big pot that I mentioned that we got through the bipartisan infrastructure bill, this is the second provision for fisheries, is the transformational habitat restoration and resilience funding. And this one is around, it's 85 million. It's a little bit bigger pot. It's a little bit more flexible in how the money can be spent than the first one that was focused more on fish passage. This one covers things anywhere. Again, we will fund capacity, but we will also fund levee removals. We will also fund, you know, farmers trying to build a buffer in their area so that they're more in compliance with ESA. Again, it's at scale. We've done work over the past, 30 years that I've been with NOAA. We've been doing these at very small scales. And now we're getting to a point where these are 500-acre projects, 600-acre projects. In other parts of the country, they're even bigger. But the opportunity to be able to get out and get those kind of projects funded is something that we're really, really happy about. These projects, this funding opportunity and the next one that I'm going to talk about under this funding opportunity closed this year, but of these four, the fish passage, the tribal fish passage, the transformational resilience, and then the one I'm going to talk about, which is underserved communities, they're all going to open up again in the spring of this year. So everyone that applied for the first round has got funding for 3 years, with the potential to go an additional 2 years after that, because we can extend those cooperative agreements. The second round that's coming out this year, again, they're 3-year grants that can go. See, once you apply, you don't need to reapply for your second and third year, which is kind of a big deal for the people that actually have to go through a federal application process. It stinks. It's hard. It's a pain in the neck. A lot of people don't even have the internet to be able to do that work. So that's an advantage of these funds. So these projects, this one, and then the underserved community one that is listed here, are going to be announced in early February. We've already had all of the selection done. There's a group of technical reviewers across the country that review these projects. Then it's taken to a panel that's the leadership level across the agency. We bring in U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, BLM, DOT to come in and sit on the panels with us and help us make these decisions about these projects. And those are soon to be announced early February, again, by the Department of Commerce Secretary, who's going to be doing that work. One additional thing about the underserved community ones, again, this is an innovative approach that NOAA has never taken before. We don't have a lot of expertise in dealing with underserved DEIJ communities. We're trying to learn how to do that. And one of the ways that we're doing that is by providing capacity for those groups to meet them where they are, so that they can provide the vision for how this money is going to be spent on their behalf, rather than us saying, well, here's what you need, right? You know, they say, this is what we need. We say, no, this is what you need. We don't want that to happen with these groups. So the first year, again, we had more than 150 applications, which was astounding, from underserved communities around the country. But those have been selected also. And we're moving forward with those announcements, which you'll see in a press release and probably in early February. The learning that's being done on all of these, we go through the selection process. We're getting feedback from the project proponents on how we can do it better. And then we're going to reframe all of our funding opportunity announcements so that we can better meet the needs of the people that we're trying to serve. This is just a little bit more on the underserved and the resilience grants. Go back, please. One additional thing to bring up with these two is that those two provisions, the transformational resilience and the fish passage, are only two provisions of 18 that NOAA has. And some of the others that are listed here, if anyone in Seattle is usually familiar with the PCSRF, the Pacific Coast Salmon Recovery Fund, that's been around for the past 20 years. That one went from an annual allotment of around 85 or 65 million up to 172. Again, orders of magnitude difference. And then these others that are listed are through our National Ocean Fisheries, the National Ocean Service counterparts that fund things like funds to the states to do their coastal zone management projects, or their shoreline projects, or their shoreline even regulation updates. So there's a couple of different the others. And if you guys want any more information on these contacts for any of these funding sources, I am happy to provide them at any time. I can get my phone number and my email to you, and that's my job. So please, please, please reach out if you're interested. So those are just a list of some of the funding sources. There are also similar or more in the Department of Transportation, federal highways, and they're even bigger than what NOAA has. I would challenge them that they're not doing as good a coordination as we are on all of this, on trying to braid these funds so that we're leveraging the crap out of them. And a statistic for you too on that is that for every dollar that we normally spend in the Office of Habitat, we've demonstrated a $7 return, and we do not require match on our grants. So we're getting that kind of a match, even though we're not requiring it. And from an economic standpoint, around $1 million, if you spend on the environment, you're gaining back 18 to 20 permanent jobs. You're creating, jobs that are in the construction industry. There are also some of the ones that I saw that you put up on, Eric, on the stewardship, getting people out, getting them healthy, getting them connected with their community and their land, super important. And this is the kind of work that we also like to do. And with that, I think, reiterating that it's an unprecedented opportunity. We all kind of started to chuckle and blush when we heard the word transformational until we started seeing the projects that were coming in, and they are truly transformational for the environment. And the message again back with you guys is, yes, it's important for fish. Yes, it's important for southern resident killer whale. Yes, it's important for the land. Yes, it's important for the tribes, but it's also important for, you know, our civic responsibility to each other. It's important for creating jobs in the community. It's important for recreational and commercial fisheries. In Seattle, this is a big deal. And we're really excited about being able to be a part of this kind of a strategy, of a funding opportunity. And with that, I'm grateful for your time to be here. This is again, the Enloe Dam removal that I'm so excited about, and I'm happy to take any questions if we still have time for that. But thank you so much.
Our first question is from Kathy.
Just a few weeks ago, or less than that now, the Duwamish River, which has been a major problem for, well, at least since the colonizers, we have been here. Certainly damaged a lot of the homes and the people, a low-income neighborhood. Does your organization touch any of that? I know it's a super fund. It's a super fund plot, but nothing's being done.
So the short answer to that, and if we work in the lower Duwamish in the Superfund areas, is yes, we absolutely do. During the introduction, the whole first part of my career was in the damage assessment and restoration business, and that had to do with the cleanups on places like the lower Duwamish and Commencement Bay. There have been two major lawsuit settlements on the lower Duwamish that actually encompassed about, each of those two lawsuit settlements encompassed about 160 different businesses in that area that have been using the environment in a way that damages it in the long run. Not intentionally, it's just what happens when you build communities and industry. So we've got around $80 million already invested, not in the cleanup, that's EPA's job, but in the restoration of those areas. And there's probably about 200 acres that I could show you that we have done so far. And there's currently a building litigation to come back and do more of that work. But yeah, and definitely that's a different, I have a cooperative agreement and grant side of our office that we always refer to as the white hat. And then we have the black hat side of our office, which is more along the lines of tracking down the polluter pays kind of a mentality. The nice thing about that is that most of the time in that polluter pays, it's turned into partnerships where we work with the businesses and come up with a solution that works for both of us. But yeah, and then one other thing too, in those areas, there is the contamination, but there's also a lot of flooding that has happened. The bipartisan infrastructure projects are ones that can help address that now rather than having to wait for EPA and NOAA to get through lawsuits. There's ways that you can, I'm sure you guys know, you can, if you open Fish Passage, if you open up the river a little bit and they have more areas to flood, those kind of problems at least get mitigated. And I know we had king tides. When you have king tides and a lot of rain, people are getting flooded out. Habitat solutions and those nature-based solutions can help solve that. So yeah, we do that kind of thing.
Next question's from Roger.
NOAA reaches globally, and I'm interested in sit on many committees. One of the big impacts that I observe is international failure to observe fishing regulations. What are you doing to help promote protection of our fish as they hit the global waters?
So you are getting outside of where my area of expertise is, but that's one of those questions that I'd be more than happy to dial 1-800 regional administrator for NOAA or for fisheries, which is Scott Rumsey at our regional office. They do, I know that they do participate in a lot of the negotiations, both Canada, Mexico, and then there's an awful lot with Japan and China. Yeah, and they do, but I can't speak to it. I wish I could. I can't give you a good answer, Roger. I'm sorry. But I'm happy to follow up and provide you a contact.
All right, Jen, I've got a question from the chat. I think Kim Moore asked this, and it's specific to people like me. We sit amongst many intelligent people. I, however, don't know much about NOAA. And she asked, if you have a conversation with somebody who has never heard of NOAA, how do you explain it? And secondly, how many lives are impacted by NOAA?
Oh my gosh. So how do I explain it? Usually I explain it by saying that it's a very small agency in the Department of Commerce with 5 different line offices that do, and with the mission of observation, science, and stewardship. So in those line offices, we have satellites, a lot of satellites. So most people know NOAA because we are the weather service. So all of your 5 o'clock news broadcasts, that's our data that you're seeing, and it is filtered out. So I'd say everybody is affected by NOAA. You can also, I always also like to say, I like to blame them for all the bad stuff. And then they also give them credit for the good days that we have. And if the modeling is incorrect, that's a local model. That's not a NOAA model. That's just our data being used in ways that we wouldn't use it. So, but there are also other pieces of it in the National Marine Fisheries Service work with the Coast Guard to do some of the regulatory thing and to end illegal fishing. All of the wind that you're hearing, the wind energy that's developing, that's all in coordination with NOAA on the west coast of the United States. Every time that you have highways that are going in, all the Department of Transportation funding, that requires consultation with NOAA for Endangered Species Act. So so how do I explain NOAA? And it's NOAA Corps. So the hurricane hunters, these people that get in these planes and fly into the middle of hurricanes so they can give us data on where those hurricanes are going prior to Sharpie Gate. That's NOAA Corps. So that everywhere. I think NOAA touches everybody through seafood safety, through data acquisition, through weather. Yes, yeah, they are. They're wonderful. I sailed on 3 of them. Oh, the research ships, a lot of them used to be right here in Lake Union. That's what got me into NOAA. I was an environmental consultant. I didn't want to do that work anymore. I got a wild hair to go to Antarctica, and I knew that NOAA went to Antarctica. So I joined the NOAA Corps. I figured I could be around environmentally thinking individuals for 3 years doing just about anything, and spent the next, 6 years, 254 days a year at sea, slinging fish, driving ships, and learning how to drive a stern trawler, which was amazing. And if you guys have nephews, nieces, daughters, if NOAA Corps, you go in as an officer, you stay for 3 years, you go for a land assignment. It's an amazing experience. There's like 25 ships that we have. They used to be in Lake Union. They got moved down to Newport on the West Coast, but they sail worldwide doing observations. They do weather buoys. One of my best experiences was out in the middle of the Bering Sea. I had to dive on some of these weather buoys. And, where do you get that kind of good experience? It's a great experience. It scared me to death. I was young enough not to know how dangerous it was. I felt invincible. So, and that's the time to do it. But yeah, it's a wonderful experience, the NOAA Corps and the planes. But
Bob has the next question for you.
Okay, I love about government programs is they have all these names that you don't really know what they do. One of them was on your chart, and it was I can remember $481 for coastal security grant fund. It sounded like putting guns on the coast to protect us or something. What is it?
so that that is with the National Ocean Service, right? This is one of the lines in NOAA is the National Ocean Service. And what they mean by coastal security is the ability to be able to maintain a community without having, I'm going to give you an example that's an Alaska one. There's Shishmareb is an island in Alaska that was a native population. They were usually nomadic. The federal government stepped in and said, we will build you schools. We will give you a community and we will make you stay here. Well, since then, with climate impacts to them, they're getting flooded. They can't fish. They can't, they can't do it. So the resiliency component of that can be something like moving them out of harm's way, or it could be building yet another seawall to protect them for the next 10 years. That's what that security, it's not anything about guns or anything, but it's probably why we don't get as much money as Department of Defense. If we had guns, it would even be more.
I've got another question from the chat from Robin Grad. They shared that $3 billion that you shared in early part of your presentation seems like a lot of money, but we're sure that that is not going to meet the needs of what you all do. So how do you prioritize these projects?
That is a really good question. And that feeds into you'll see in our notice of funding opportunities, we do put in priorities. And depending on which one of those 4 opportunities you're talking about, the priorities differ just a little bit. The underpinning of all of our work is that work needs to be able to say that it is helping recover endangered species or sustain fisheries of some kind. You know, we have to be able to say our habitat work is doing that. There is not much you can do, especially in the Pacific Northwest, that is not doing that, as well as helping communities. But we prioritize it going through a technical review that looks at the technical impacts that the projects are going to have, how many fish are going to be able to use that place, how important is that place, what part of the ecosystem is being addressed, because we try to do holistic approaches. That's one priority. And then the next level, when it goes to a panel discussion, is more along the lines of what does it look as a complete quilt. We're trying to get some equity, some geographic equity, and make sure that it's spread out enough so that it's not a peanut butter approach everywhere, that we're concentrating things in particular places so that it can make a difference. So that kind of prioritization is what happens. And the Pacific Northwest has got so many different prioritizations for endangered species. We tend to do really, really well in these competitions, usually a little bit more than 1/3 to 1/2 of the money that NOAA puts out based on current prioritizations comes out here. So it's about the fish, it's about the habitat, and then it's about the people interspersed through the whole thing.
Great. I have a question from Pete.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. I'd like you to describe the intersection between reopening fish or reopening migratory pathways and dam removal, and whether or not you're interfacing with the Department of Agriculture on that, thinking specifically about dams on the Columbia and elsewhere. Are you mixed up with that?
That is a really good question. The short answer for it is not yet. My group is not. We are in discussions with the Columbia River Task Force on how we can be more integrated into that process. Some of the proposals that we got were specific to the big 5 Snake River dams on the Columbia and how to take them out, which is not something that the fish passage funding was actually intended for, if you look at Maria Cantwell's website. But we are trying to figure out ways to work with, it's primarily tribes that want that to happen. We've already started negotiating with them, having some more discussions with the task force on how we can and Congress has actually talked about moving some of that infrastructure money into that task force directly without even making it competitive. So there's a lot in that space, but the first answer to that is no, we're not doing that yet. That we have. We've talking to the farmers is one of my favorite things. Skagit in particular has been a great place to learn about how to talk with farmers in Puget Sound. And finding a way that we can actually do that flood fish farm type of initiative, where they're experiencing the same thing down in California, in the Sacramento, for example. And I've had great conversations with farmers that say, oh my gosh, I love this restoration money because I raise cows in the summer and I raise fish in the winter, depending on how you actually configure your land. So we will be, we wouldn't be making any sort of a move or funding anyone that is going to end up in a situation where we want to see equal weight given to what the intent is for the people that are on that land. Because if you only do one yen in the lawsuit, you don't end up getting what you want anyway. So you have to balance the needs and the priorities of both. And I don't even know if I answered your question now, but we're trying.
I've got one last quick question for myself, if that's okay, Jen. We have just a couple of minutes so we can wrap it up with this. As an individual with 3 young children, if I were to ask you, what should I go home and tell my 3 kids that we can do to complement the work that NOAA is doing, what would I say?
You know, the really easiest one is get outside, go plant some trees, because that's the way that most people start. Some of the programs that you guys run that I just learned about today with sustainability, getting out with some of those early farm programs, that's another way. But definitely planting the trees and, getting outside and looking at the environment that you're living in, because we all have to optimize this landscape because we all have to live here. Yeah, another one is, checking out places like the Southern Resident Killer Whale Museum is not a bad way either, when you start to get the education on what these animals need and what the environment that they have. So I would tell them, plant a tree to start with, and then get to know other people that plant trees, and then it'll get bigger and bigger. It's, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Jen, for enlightening us and sharing the great work that you're doing at NOAA. In recognition of the generosity of your time, our club has contributed to Harvest Against Hunger. We've given 600 servings of healthy produce in your name to local food banks. Lisa and Jen, thank you for fielding questions from our members. Now, as you all know, our club greatly benefits from the sponsorship of several members, and I'd like to express my gratitude first to our gold sponsors, Liz Powell with Remax on Market, Rotary supporter Bob Alexander. Other sponsors include Joel Farrell with Morgan Stanley, Dominic Musafia, Seattle Divorce Options, Jacobson Jarvis Certified Public Accountants, Matt Bratlin, Net Tech Pro Bono IT Services, and for our tech support, Live Oak AV. Thank you all. Now, yes, thank you. To close out our program, we have a few announcements from co-VP of membership, Nicole Klein, after which Jen Gladish, who is standing in for our Prince of Programs, Ken Grant, she will share what speakers are scheduled in the coming weeks. Nicole.
There, I think our first slide might be about, oh yes, we have these empowerment passes. For those of you who are guests, we'd like you to come join us, Jen, as a member. And some of our members have been doing a really good job in asking others to join us for lunch and seeing if it's a fit. So we wanted to recognize the names up on the screen: Jennifer, Allison, Steve, Mark, Jeff, Haseo, and then special recognition to John King and Lynn Lindsay, because we have 2 new members from them. So yes, thanks. Good job. So if you're a competitive person, you want to get your name up there, let's keep going. Okay. So the next one, who was at the holiday party? Woo-hoo! Yeah. It was a fun time and we avoided the ice just barely. I had an Uber driver that was a little scared to go down that hill. And then that song, which Sue Nixon and the Rogues, there's Sue and Bill, where did you go? Oh, there you go. Right. I was at your table. Anyway, and you with your sign did a great job. And that song is called Christmas, Christmas, isn't it? What is it? Well, yeah, you could find it on your phone and it was in my head all week. So I think we did a pretty good job. Maybe we should try again. But the next thing is we have an African tour that's coming up. It's already full because it's a lot to get your information ready to travel internationally, but we have a contact. Where did he go? Oh, and we met right before. Okay, so with Larry Granite, if you are interested in coming to one of these in the future, or any of these people that are going on the trip, we have quite a few from Seattle 4. Your partner, spouse, or child could even go if they're right age. And then the next slide will show you what they can experience while they're there. If you have airline miles that are piling up and you want to know how to use them, this is a good way to do it. And this time they're going to visit a free medical camp and at least 1 malaria project, which I know is close to a lot of us. And if you have any other questions, Larry is back here to answer them. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. We have some really great programs coming up in the next month. So on January 11th, we'll have Dr. Quentin Morris and the Northwest Marine Trade Association. Key to Change founder, we will learn so much about public school students and things that they're doing to affect change there. January 18th, we've got Jordan Babineau, which I learned today. We don't call previous Seahawks players retired. We call them Seahawks legends. And I think that's the coolest thing. I would like to be called a legend one day. I don't want to play football though. He has recently gone back to school and received his MBA. So he'll be coming and he's authored a book that he'll be sharing a little bit about. Wonderful. Can't wait. And January 25th, we've got Andrea Houston, an author. She has the book, 5 Reasons Why Women Make Great Leaders. And I think that we can all say that having a really robust and diverse workforce makes a workplace much better. So there'll be a lot of wonderful information that we'll all be able to take away and take back to our workplaces and our peers. So can't wait.
Thank you, Jen and Nicole. Appreciate all the work that you're doing. Now, it's been a while since I've shared a sports report with you, so I'll just catch you up on the latest news. If you watched last Sunday, the Seahawks dominated the New York Jets, winning 23-6 with 2 touchdown passes from Geno Smith, a dominating running game, and a defense that forced 3 turnovers and kept the Jets out of the end zone. The question now is whether the Hawks can make the playoffs. Now, with an 8-8 record, the Hawks need to beat the Rams at Lumen Field this Sunday, and the Lions need to beat the Packers to make the playoffs. So you're going to be rooting for both the Lions and the Seahawks coming up. Last night, the Kraken scored 4 times in the second period on their way to a 5-2 victory over the Edmonton Oilers to improve their record. After winning their second straight game, they now stand alone in 3rd place in the Pacific Division. And as Bill mentioned earlier, in other Kraken news, the NHL announced this week that the Winter Classic, which is an outdoor hockey game, will be held at T-Mobile Park on January 1st, 2024, where the Kraken will host the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, and as Bill and I were chatting about this earlier, that this is just one more good reason why it's great to have a roof on T-Mobile Park. Now, even if it is inclement weather, they will not close the roof entirely, but they would close it partially to cover the rink so that the rink would be protected, but you can still have the outdoor experience. This is a really big deal for Seattle to host this game. If you tracked any of it on social media, there are certainly some fans elsewhere that were saying, you know, why is Seattle getting this event? They've only been a team for about a minute and a half. And I can tell you that one of the factors, there were lots of them, of course, but one of the factors was that our fans went without a team for so long. And we have been patient and so enthusiastic, as you all know, for supporting the Kraken. And the NHL really wanted to say thank you to those Seattle fans. So we're excited to host that event coming up. Yeah, they do only close the roof for rain and not for snow. Let's hope that we don't have either on January 1st, 2024. Okay, and then the Huskies beat the Texas Longhorn 27-20 in the Alamo Bowl. And they finished out their season 11-2, which just 1 year after 4-8 record. So that's pretty awesome. The Huskies will likely end the season ranked in the top 10 nationally. And I'll leave you with this. Olympic gold medalist gymnast Simone Biles reminds us, don't wait until you've reached your goal to be proud of yourself. Be proud of every step you take toward reaching that goal. We are adjourned.